Finance Commission, quorum being present, I call the Finance Commission meeting of May 24th to order. Thank you.
And we have a quorum for the Capital Outlay Committee, and I too will call the meeting to order. Today, Wednesday, May 24th, we're at the Usovich Lecture Hall at Norwood High School, and we are being recorded. Is this a live recording today, or is this for future reference?
It's just 8.
All right, so we're being recorded by NCM, so folks will have an opportunity to watch us online. And there's a video call link available, meetgoo.com. Well, I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's crazy, but you can go online to the town hall and see the link if necessary. Dial-in information. I'm not going to go through that too because there's just a lot of numbers here that I think are very difficult for people to jot down. So with that, do you mind if I introduce the, tonight for the Capital Outlay Committee, we are having an agenda that will include ad hoc stormwater utility study, committee presentation, the Capital Outlay Committee. We have updates to the FY23 capital projects, public works, look ahead at future projects, capital improvement policy draft for review. We also have approval of our April 27, 2023 meeting minutes. So at this point, I think I'd like to turn the meeting over to Jerry Hopcroft, who is the chairman of the Ad Hoc Stormwater Utility Study Committee. Jerry, 20 minutes perhaps, 25, thereabouts, similar to the selectmen. Well, okay. Jerry's going to give an overview of the work to date that's been done on the Stormwater Committee. I suggested we have this meeting because there's a lot of project work coming up in the future related to stormwater. In fact, in FY24, we do have the first project for associated, well, one of the first projects associated with the stormwater work. That would be a design study for a detention basin at Henderson Field. Given the extent of the project work that has been scoped out, and the costs that are associated with that work, we thought it would be a good idea for both the Finance Commission and the Capital Outlay Committee to build some familiarity with what the challenges are with the projects, what they are intended to correct and to improve, and that might be a good basis for us going forward to have an understanding of how we plan for and eventually finance these numerous projects going down the line. So with that, I'll leave it to you, Jerry, for the formal presentation.
Okay, thank you. The Ad Hoc Stormwater Utility Committee was created about a year ago by appointment through the General Manager's office, and we've been meeting now with some significant input from CDM Smith and from Stantec and from a few other places on what we can be doing as a community to help mitigate some of the flooding that's been happening as a result of storms getting bigger and stronger over the years. Our objective is to prepare a recommendation to the town manager, the selectmen, town meeting, finance committee, capital outlay committee, anybody else who cares on how we can deal with all of these issues going forward and the very expensive things going forward. So this evening we just want to have a very brief discussion. I don't think this was a function again, Chief.
It went too low. Yeah,
All right. So here we see the objective tonight really is just to provide some information to the Finance Commission and the Capital Outlay Committee on what we've been doing, what we see coming down the road, and get it into the thinking process of how we're going to deal with it going forward. It's not going to be easy for all of us, for any of us for that matter. These are the members of the committee. You'll see we got a usual suspects mixed in with this committee, the Capital Outlay Committee, the Finance Committee, Selectmen's Office, and a few other committees around town. And we have a pretty good mix of capabilities within this group, and I think that's a good thing for going forward. This is really what we have here for the problem. This slide shows us what happens to rainfall that occurs in the community, any community, anywhere in the community. You see up in the upper left, rainfall on a normal vegetated area is going to amount to about 10% in runoff, and about 25% in low, and 25% in deep infiltration, and about 40% is going to go into evaporation. And that's because the vegetation will hold that rainwater back again and not allow it to run off. Gives it time to infiltrate and time to evaporate. When we start putting in some houses, and we start putting in some lawns, we get up to about 20% of runoff. And the other areas reduce proportionally. We get up to intense or denser development, particularly of houses, we start seeing 30% runoff. Get into areas like the downtown area, and we're talking about 50% or more. If we look at a large parking lot, you're going to look at 100% runoff from that parking lot. Right now, we believe that the town of Norwood is generally overall average, probably within the 30 to 35% runoff range. Already starting to creep up as we go along. The more development we do, the higher that number is going to be. And so we need to be aware of that and be able to try to control it. The effects of that runoff can be pretty significant. We see the flooding that we've seen before, not a big surprise. We had a lot of flooding, and we're going to have more of it because the storms are getting bigger, and they are getting more frequent, and they are going to be causing more runoff. Flooding causes a lot of economic hardship. We saw the closing of the hospital. That was one problem. All the people who worked there are now out of a job. That's pretty significant on those individual people. Property damage downtown, under the backside of the Meadowbrook area was significant. And housing damage and property damage in general is going to go together. A lot of effects are very significant in that sort of a problem. And what we're going to see here is some of the effects of the flooding. This is actually an old slide that came from the fire station, apparently. Holly Jones sent it to me, and I take no ownership of the definition on the side. I assume it's right. I'm pretty sure that's Bernie. Other than that, I can't guarantee anything.
He's in the vote.
Beyond that, that's what we were told about who those people actually are. This is another interesting little slide, and this particular one was down by the public safety building. That was not the most recent flood. That was the last one before that. That one too much. But it looked pretty much the same underneath the bridge in any event. So clearly something is going to need to be done to manage stormwater in the town of Norwood. Stormwater is regulated in a number of ways. There we see federal regulations with wetland protection laws, stormwater standards in the handbook, and that stormwater handbook is a very interesting document. It is kind of the standard that engineers in the town uses for stormwater system development. There are some revisions expected fairly soon. We'll talk about those in a minute. Then we have these MS4 requirements, which are the municipal storm sewer system, a very inappropriate name, because they're not storm sewers, they're storm drains. But then we'd have to say MSTS, and that gets people crazy, like acronyms. So it's improperly named, but that's what MS4 stands for. There are a lot of regulations in there, what the towns have to do, including passing some bylaws and passing some regulations, which will implement the requirements of the state regulations. We also have some Norwood regulations, and those are going to be in the form of the Wetlands Protection Bylaw, some Board of Health regulations, subdivision regulations, planning board regulations, site plan review, zoning regulations, water resource protection districts, and the bylaws and regulations. The bylaw has been passed by town meeting. The regulations have not yet been implemented. But the planning department is working on those. Hopefully we'll see them reasonably soon. Which kind of brings us to the problem of today, and what are we going to do about all of these challenges? We've identified a bunch of engineering solutions which came out of the Meadowbrook study, which is now about 11 years old. We did accomplish 2 or 3 small pieces of that Meadowbrook study. The majority of the work has not been done, primarily because we've been trying to fund it out of the annual budget, and the numbers are too big. There are too many zeros on every project to be able to fund it out of the normal budgetary process. So the challenge now is to find and recommend a funding and implementation plan. And that's what the ad hoc committee is designing to do. We do want to conduct some public information sessions. This is the first of those, because we think it's the second of those. We also talked to the selectmen a little while ago. We think it's important that all of you people become aware of what's going on first, because once we go to a public meeting, people will be asking you what's going on. You kind of need to know. And so we want to make sure that you do understand where we are before we start with the public meetings. The first public meeting is scheduled for June 7th. It's going to be at the Senior Center on Prospect Street. Most of you, if not all of you, should have got an email from me today with a notice of that. It will be online. It will not be online on Zoom, as I put in the meeting. I've been advised we don't use Zoom. What do I know? I always use it. We will be on GoToMeeting. In any event, we will be sending out the link soon enough so that everybody gets notified of that. And every town meeting member who has listed a email address got the same email this morning, along with the chairpersons of several of the groups in town. And the library has posted a notice as well. So we're very happy to see all of that information going about. We expect a fairly large crowd. As we move forward, Bob indicated one of the early projects is going to be a detention basin in Hennessy Field. We know that's not going to go over really well, people next door. If we live next door, it won't go well with us either. But we need to talk about what that's going to look like, why it's not as onerous as it appears to be, and what we can do to mitigate concerns of the neighbors. We will be holding a public hearing very close to Hennessy Field, probably in Murphy Field, sometime in the near future, specifically for that project. It'll be open to the world as well, but we'll be inviting the neighbors in that area specifically to go to that meeting. And that will be true for other projects that are very closely associated with specific neighborhoods. We'll try to make sure that everybody directly affected knows about it in advance. We also want to make sure that we know that stormwater is not a singular responsibility of town government. All property owners have a community responsibility to share in the management of things that can affect pretty much everyone. And there are a lot of things homeowners can do. We don't need to get into those today, but one of the things is, for example, taking sump pump discharges off the street into the backyard. You know, you don't let it run down the driveway. You don't put it directly into the storm drain. That's a big issue in some areas of town. Keeping the vegetation up is a good way to do that. And we do that as a community in community areas as well. Municipal responsibilities include these sorts of issues: maintaining the storm drain system, which the Public Works Department does a remarkably good job of at the moment. We can also use a lot of things like swales, detention basins, rain gardens, things that are called low-impact development, things that can keep water out of the storm drain system. We can require those as part of development going forward in subdivisions, and even just houses and streets that are being developed. We can include a lot of these things as part of the requirements. Develop and implement the regulatory structure. As indicated, we do have the bylaw in place. We have all those other regulations in place. We do not yet have the MS4 regulations in place. And we need to keep that moving as quickly as we can. And finally, we need to minimize deviations and waivers from existing regulations. When we look at the Conservation Commission regulations, the Planning Board regulations, there are a lot of good things in there that will minimize runoff. That's why they're there. And make sure that we don't waive those conditions in order to minimize the problem going forward. This is what we're currently doing in town. The DPW operates and maintains existing catch basins, storm drains. That includes cleaning them out on a regular basis. Every time we accept a street, they end up with a whole bunch more catch basins to work with. The longer the street, the more catch basins. It's kind of the way the world works. Cleaning of storm drains is a continuous problem. The more water we get in there, the more debris we get in there, the quicker they fill up, the quicker they overflow, the bigger the flooding becomes. So again, we're back to how do we minimize storm flow into the drain system. We're built through the capital budgeting process today. That is not a good process. When we do development, we do require developers to install the system. That's a good thing in terms of the cost of installation. It does not slow down the cost of maintenance of the system. Sometimes pages don't like to cooperate here. The Middlebrook study in 2003 was the last major study that we've done. There were little studies here and there, but the last major one. There have been some updates last year by Stantec did those updates first, and then CDM Smith used that updated material to develop a concept of how all of these projects could be staged in various ways they could be funded over time. Our job is to figure out which one is going to be best for the community and get it implemented. Only a small number of those have been implemented to date. Currently planned and projected projects come from the estimated cost in that Stantec study. And this is going to be pretty hard to read, I know, but it's the same one that was in the package that you all got online, I think, this morning. Basically, we spread everything out in terms of the capital budgets to stage the projects. I suggested that it'd be really cool if we could just bond the whole $40 million now and build it all. And Mark got a little bit twitchy about that and decided we really couldn't quite pull that one off. And so we staged this out over 10 years to do all the projects that have undone within the Meadowbrook study, with a little bit of modification to some of them as we go. If you look at the left-hand column, you're going to see something that we had not seen earlier, which is some of the projects that are already in that study but have some funding available. So the first project under Meadowbrook was actually channeling the Meadowbrook itself a little bit bigger, a little bit smoother, a little bit cleaner to carry more water faster into the Neponset River. That money has been funded by an ARPA grant. We also have the next study, which is,
Meadowbrook Channel Improvements Construction.
what's the next one?
Down there you have Dean Street Drain.
The Dean Street Drain needs to be designed, and that's what the second line is. That can also be funded out of ARPA. We also have about $2.5 million in ARPA funding still available for some of these other projects. And so we'll see that the first project for the next year after the Meadowbrook is completed is going to be Hennessy Field. We need to do the design work in there first. That's going to involve getting the community involved, and then we get to do the construction in the following year. Since there's only 1 year where we have 2 projects in design, and no construction starting underway. If you look at the bottom line, you see how all of that is going to work out in the long term. Now, these projects, Meadowbrook Channel will enhance that project, will enhance the flow capacity within that stream, get everything out to Winniposit more quickly. Dean Street project is a relatively small project, comes up to a lot of money for what turns out to be a relatively localized problem, but it's a big problem. And so that'll be the second issue that we deal with. Hennessy Field is going to create a detention basin to slow water down from getting into the drain through Murphy Field. Goes from Hennessy Field in a culvert or in a drain underground into another drain into the Meadowbrook. Those drains need to be upgraded as well, and the Hennessy Basin will slow the water down enough to make those work. Murphy Field is going to increase the size of that pipe that goes under Murphy Field, and that'll allow the whole thing from that end to work smoothly. Notice we're starting from the end, from the Ponce River and moving up. And that's because if you start at the top, just exacerbate the problem every step of the way going forward. Giles Street is next after that. That drains the system, most of the runoff from around and behind the Lowell Hospital. It crosses under the railroad tracks at the underpass at Giles Street and Broadway, and ultimately connects into the Hennessy Field system, which will now become the detention basin. Then we go to Broadway and Hatton. That's at the other end, and comes around by the post office and down the street to connect into the same drainage system and out into the Meadowbrook Hennessy Field. Jacobson Drive picks up an area off of Dean Street, north of west of Pleasant Street, ties that all into the system that's coming down that we just fixed, we would have just fixed up on Giles Street. And then we pick up East Hoyle and Washington Street, and that's the bend in East Hoyle and the train station, what didn't get picked up from behind the hospital in the first go-around. All those projects, we just add up that bottom line, $40,452,000, that's early 2022 dollars. It does not include inflation over 10 years. It does not include the cost of bonding or financing over 10 years. It does not include the cost of maintaining all those new systems over 10 years. That's just the capital cost to build them, design them, and build them. As we projected now in 2022 dollars. We have not done a projection yet on what that's going to look like in real dollars in 10 years, but finance folks are busy on that, and we expect some data shortly on looking at that. And we'll be using those updated numbers, projecting forward on how we recommend that we pay for it. It's a big number. It's a scary number. And it has to be built in somehow to the capital outlay projections and ultimately into the finance committee projections. So the impact of these projects, focus on the downstream improvements first, reroute and diverting stormwater from areas that now flood, install new and upgraded catch basins and facilities. How are we going to finance it? There are really only three realistic ways to finance these projects. First is through the normal capital outlay process and the operating budget. We've been trying that for 10 years. Didn't turn out real well. That didn't turn well at all. It's not going to turn out any better trying to go forward. We're going to put all of this into a capital outlay budget every year. We could do all of these projects. We could do nothing else. Bottom line. We could do a debt exclusion override. There are a lot of scary parts to that, which I think everybody in this room has at least reasonably fundamentally aware of. It's going to cause a lot of issues with bonding. We can do some sort of an assessment for separate stormwater management fee. There are several ways to do that sort of function. The most common method with that is to create an enterprise fund, similar to the way that we do the light funding or the water and sewer funding, where we would charge a fee that would be only for storm drain management or stormwater management. There are some other ways to look at that as well. How you assess such a fee is not at all clear. There's at least a dozen ways we could do that. And we're looking at that as options. The committee is still looking at all three of these as viable. We can see some issues with all of them. We're going to have to figure out one or another which one to do. We will make that recommendation fairly quickly. We hope that by the time we get to the fall town meeting, we will have had some recommendation available so that we can go some agreement by town meeting on how to move forward. Hopefully the selectmen will have a strong recommendation at that time. We probably won't have all the answers at that point, but we'll have a pretty good idea where we're going. So what we want to do now is continue working with the town staff to develop an appropriate funding mechanism. Do the public information sessions that we've been talking about, and then return to the fall with a specific funding plan in as much detail as we possibly can come up with. These are what we're looking at in terms of public meetings going forward. We do have the first one coming up on June 7th. We'll be talking to other groups like the League of Women Voters, Progress Norwood, maybe the town committees, anyone else we can think of who's willing to host a meeting, and we'll be there. If we can get a bunch of people together, we'll be there. We can make it happen. We're looking for input from everybody and anybody who has an idea. And we want to make sure everybody understands exactly where we're going before we get there. So that's where we're at, and hopefully I'll be able to come up with some good approaches before we get there. Questions, comments, critiques, complaints. Complaints go to Bob. Everything else go to me.
Curious as you go forward with this, and I'm not expecting answers now, but will there be a way to estimate the impact of various things and therefore give the capital outlay committee or the town meeting an opportunity to understand what we're getting, what the value is for each of these expenses? So can we say we're going to take this many acres and we're going to be able to handle so many inches of rain per hour or so, or per day, or whatever the metric is? And I'm not really sure how you would do that. But as you look at these various projects, and I definitely understand the idea that we need to figure out the downstream solutions before we do the upstream solutions, because we don't want to just move the problem someplace else. But just curious how that's measured and how that can be communicated to the public.
Sure, there are a couple of ways to look at that. All of the systems that we build these days are designed based on what we call a 25, 50, 100-year storm. Was this a 100-year basis or 25 or 50? Most of like Henderson.
Most closed drain systems, the catch basins and manholes you see in the street are designed for a 10-year storm, simply for economics. It's been pretty much the consistency all along the.
Well, what we just saw was like a 100-year storm.
Well, for a very short period. So, you know, the storm drains in Norwood and most communities in Massachusetts are designed for a 10-year storm, which is 4.7 inches in 24 hours.
Okay.
We get close to 5 inches, maybe more, in 90 minutes. Right? So it was just absolutely overwhelmed. So hopefully this answers your question. So this study didn't use the current data that we're experiencing now. We're using data they're predicting what the storms would look like in the year 2070, the intensity and the frequency. So that's what this storm drain system that Jerry has talked about, the improvements, is based on. And in that study, it shows the flooding now, all right, what you would see for flooding now, and how much it would decrease in area, and also the duration that, you know, there still will be some flooding. You know, there'll be a little flooding in the street,
Sure.
but it'll go away much quicker, because everything will be sized enough to carry it down to the basin, where it will be stored and let out slowly to the Naponton River. But that shows in the report, and we'll be showing that in the presentation.
Okay, great, thank you.
It also doesn't fill up as fast, for example, on the bridge, for example,
Correct.
in which so, because more is going out quicker, it builds up more slowly
Right,
with the
okay.
same storm.
Jerry, going back to your, the list of projects. So Meadowbrook is underway, right? Meadowbrook is where, I remember that from 10 years ago or 20 years ago, whenever. Is that project being done, or where are we, or what would be like the priority?
So, yeah, back in 2003, there was a Meadowbrook study, and it made a lot of recommendations. We really didn't do much because of cost. So the recent study went through it, and a lot of the recommendations are the same, but it's changed based on storm intensities and durations, what have you. Right now, we're in design for the first project, which is the streamlining of the Meadowbrook Channel from the head wall down to where the Army Corps of Engineers finished their project behind like Monkey Sports. So that's the first project. That's 1.8 million design and construction. That's in design, and that's presently funded by ARPA funds.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, didn't they do that a long time ago when they put Monkey Sports, and then they rechannel that Meadowbrook behind there?
They did from basically 6th Street down to Dean Street. They did that section. We're taking it from 6th Street up to the Meadowbrook head wall, right near Sunnyside and Pleasant Fair. And then in the fiscal '24 capital request will be request for funds for design of the basin that Jerry has talked about. That has to happen next.
Yeah.
All right, because we gotta, before we start putting too much water in the Naponton River, we have to have a plan in place to hold the water back that slowly lets it out.
Just sort of from a historical perspective, the 2003 Meadowbrook study, when we talked, that I think references the detention basin at Hennessy. So
Absolutely.
that just give your perspective of how far behind the project line you've actually become because of that.
Pretty much all of these projects were in the
Yeah.
Meadowbrook.
And then the Naponton River flooding is, Mike can attest to that.
I certainly
And
can.
those poor people at the bottom of Dean Street, of course, they're,
Oh, yeah.
below sea level down there, but, those couple of houses and but that's the Naponton River overflowing. I don't know if the state has any way of dredging it or whatever,
Well, I think that's the problem with, not the problem, I think that's the mandated MS4 permitting. I mean, because now the EPA is involved with permitting stormwater systems, there's a lot of diligence needs to be made.
It's like the
in terms
airport
of making
floods.
sure what you're discharging into the Naponton. So things will be a little more tough to deal with in the future without enhancing the system.
Mark, do you have a projected construction start date on that channel?
I do not, Jerry, but it's going on pretty well, the design. It's more in our favor as far as amount of work involved, so we could be going out with bid sometime late this year for a spring start.
Couple questions. How are you going to contact neighbors? That's been a really big thing in town meeting and in other meetings.
We've talked about that in the committee, and the general consensus at the moment is by direct mail.
Yeah, okay, great. I like that, thank you. How about Murphy Field? What impact is it going to actually have? If I'm right, Murphy Field is the ball field, right?
Correct.
Get them mixed up all the time. So how is that going to impact Murphy Field and use of Murphy Field and that sort of thing?
It's gonna mess up the lawn big time when we construct it, and then we're gonna put it back together again, pretty much the same way.
So
So
how
long term,
long,
nothing. Mike?
The playing surface won't be bothered. It's outside the playing surface, outside
Okay.
the fence line. That's the junction point.
okay,
That's what Jerry's talking about.
Close to
That-
Pleasant
that-
Street.
Yeah, that's where the work will
Okay.
take place in there.
so it won't disrupt the
Little League.
kids playing and stuff? No? Okay, thank you.
So does the end result of this result in changing any of the flood lines on the FEMA maps that would then affect or reduce flood insurance requirements for various properties?
I don't think it's gonna change the FEMA map at all, because FEMA map is based typically on topography, and so some elevation of footage. What we ended up with here was that there was little holes and valleys, and there wasn't enough capacity to get the water out quickly enough. Had nothing to do with the elevation directly. That's what's wrong with FEMA.
Okay, so there's benefits to this, but one of the benefits is not reducing anybody's flood insurance costs, because the maps aren't going to change.
Well, it might do it in the sense of some of those places that got flooded recently probably got a hit on their insurance. But by showing an ability to reduce that risk, that might happen. But it wouldn't be based on the FEMA. It would be
Okay.
based on actual events, history.
Okay, the history, yeah, insurance history, got it.
Jerry?
Okay, Jerry, what happens if the Hennessy Field project isn't built? Does the whole house of cards fall?
Pretty much.
Speaking of Hennessy Field, I grew up in that area, and it's pretty much all I remember is ledge up there. Has there been any testing or anything like that? If that's the
There'll be a
potential?
lot more of that testing done as part of the design work. But if you remember that, there is a fairly deep depression on the uphill side, and that'll be the basis for where we're starting with it. I mean, it's not gonna be all the way from the back property line to Pleasant Street, one big hole. That's probably not gonna be useful. And there'll be a lot of recreational ability built back into it again, as we go forward. It's gonna be to handle a storm like we just had a couple of years ago. A normal rainstorm is not gonna fill up the basin on Hennessy Field. We'll be able to show that when we get to the design phase. And that's part of the reason to having all those meetings, exactly that field. Yeah,
So the area that you're talking about for the basin would be off of the street, okay, which street? Can't remember.
Pleasant.
No,
we start off Pleasant
no,
Street.
not
Lennox,
Pleasant.
Start
No,
off Pleasant
it's
Street,
back.
really big
It's back,
hill,
it's,
and then go down the back, and there's a little
okay,
valley up to the
so
back.
what's the street that goes?
Lennox Street,
Lennox.
Lennox Ave.
No, I don't want Lennox either, in between.
Cross Street, Cross Street.
Cross Street,
Yeah,
thank you.
East Cross Street.
It's on the wrong side of town.
Yeah,
I haven't been out much lately. So on Cross Street, if you enter Hennessy Field, on the right-hand side, you're looking towards Murphy Field, you see this big gully.
Right.
Is that around where you would be putting this? Because the rest of it is all rock. I was a really happy person and
Well, we
worked on the
haven't got
fire
a full design
department.
out there yet, but I would assume that we would optimize the use of that existing basin.
Yeah, okay.
There would be really no reason not to,
It's a
and
mess.
lots of reasons to do that.
Yeah, okay.
So,
Okay, one more question, Rick? You all set?
Oh, I did have another question, but go ahead to Eric first and then.
okay,
Okay.
so you said you used the basin area for recreation, and it's not being used for flood storage. Okay, so how do you know when it's gonna flood?
When it's raining.
Okay, so I guess the question would be, and this is just a basic safety thing, so there needs to be some kind of a system that says it's, now you can use it, now you can't.
Well, I think it's gonna depend on what we end up using it for. I mean, recreation is a pretty broad
Mm-hmm.
definition. So I think it depends on what the design looks like at the end. How deep is it? How wide is it? How steep are the slopes? How long is it? What can we physically do in there that's not being done now? Should it just be a trail through there? We'll have to see what it looks like.
That
But
makes,
one of the things that we can look to is come to the meetings and tell us what you'd like to see.
I can imagine residents having concern about, is this someplace where even children or pets or something is gonna get caught
Yeah,
and drowned in a
we
flood
don't
because
want-
suddenly it fills up, you
We
know?
don't want steep slopes that people can't get out of.
Right.
You know, that's certainly not the objective.
Yeah, and a lot of times these basins are fenced off, so nobody can get in there.
Well, as a worst case, we could do that, but I'd rather
I mean,
not.
it'll be shown at the meeting June 7th, but the renderings now, it's a passive area. We're not encouraging people to go in the basin because you're gonna have a brook in there, you're gonna have wildflowers and native plants all along the slope. The recreation is beautiful paths up top, viewing areas, some educational signboards up there.
Okay.
So we're not, inviting people down into it to participate
Okay,
in it.
that makes sense. I think that's an important point when because I think when you say recreation, the first thing that came to my mind was like a soccer field.
Yeah.
So I think you need to
definitely
immediately dispel that and describe what you just described, Mark just described, to understand what
not. I haven't seen
recreation
that
means.
rendering yet, so I didn't know about
Yeah.
that.
Water polo.
That works. All right.
You were mentioning specific neighborhoods that I know are particularly impacted. I'm curious, what percentage of Norwood is currently like at risk for flooding, and how much of that would be addressed by this? Like, if we went through with this whole $40 million, if $40 million dropped in our laps tomorrow, would that solve the problem townwide for a 10-year storm? Or are there still areas that would still have problems?
I'm sure there's still some areas that are not on this list that are gonna have to be addressed at some point. They're relatively small, I think. beyond
Yeah,
that.
this is the Meadowbrook watershed, as we call it, is the most densely populated, built-up area. So that's why we're seeing the flooding, right down at Murphy Field, and you get up to Guile Street under the railroad tracks, East Hoyle by the center, by the hospital, central of East Vernon, in front of the police and fire station, Manhattan Street under the railroad bridge. That's what this is gonna address,
Okay.
those areas there. Are there some areas outside of town, smaller ones? Yeah, I mean, we're doing Dean Street, like Jerry said. And there's probably some smaller ones, much smaller
There were
projects.
some issues on Washington Street where just after it goes under the railroad bridge, going north from Plentyfield Brook, where it goes underneath.
Yeah,
There's some issues there, for example,
but
that
this,
are not here.
this just focuses on that.
Is,
It's almost 1,000 acres. It's a huge area.
Okay.
is there any ability to divert or split so to fill up the Hawthorne Swale as a potential basin?
Which way?
Hawthorne Swale, Froggies, whatever you want to call
I don't know, we ought to consider that.
No, it's really outside the watershed boundaries that we're looking at. You gain some control. That would be, we'd have to look into it. You have to build large embankments in there because it's really shallow in there. We didn't go that route because it's really outside the boundaries of the watershed area.
Short answer is yes, but not practical.
Don't really know how much water we can retain either.
Yeah.
Good calculation.
All right, anything else we can try to answer?
Is there anything, Alex, you want to say just about the projected bed tables? I don't think we have to get into a lot of detail about it, but is there anything you want to just say about what you produced here?
I do have a whole schedule printed out with bands and bonds for borrowing. Depending on how you want to do, you're looking at, for a 30-year projection, over 30 years, you're looking at about a total of 81 million for total cost with borrowing. It depends on how you want, then that's borrowing over the 10-year course. And the reason why I was saying with the borrowing, you can't borrow up front, there are certain arbitrary reasons you can't just do it that way. So it is all broken down. I have talked with financial advisors where it would be that, and this is over if it were to go 10 years of the plan. I mean, of course, 5 years down the line, but the thing, you have to space it out a little bit. That's always a possibility. Not that you stop it, but just continue with the borrowing. But I do have projections on the 20-year borrowing, 30-year. You can also, differentiate between the two. You can start off on borrowing for 20 years at the beginning on certain bonds or bands, or sorry, not bands, but bonds. And then maybe, you know, if interest rates were to get higher, you could go to 30. Or if they were to get higher, you could go down to 20 and we'll borrow longer, however you want. I mean, there's a mixture, but I do have multiple plans set up if anybody wants to partake. And I do have printouts.
We did get those recently, but we haven't met since we got them. We'll definitely be looking at all of those options. I appreciate that. It's a lot more work than I could put together. Even with a computer and AI. All right, nothing else? Thank you very much.
I think I'll make a motion for the Stormwater Utility Committee to adjourn. Second by Alan.
All in favor? All opposed? None. We're adjourned.
I'll make a motion.
Motion made, and do we have a second with FinCom? Motion made and seconded to adjourn the FinCom meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you.
I don't know.
Stormwater Utility meeting, that's, the Capital Outlay Committee meeting, and the next agenda item, number 2, is updates to FY23 capital projects. I'll let Mike kind of walk us through it.
Sure.
We included in the agenda the updates.
Yes.
Mike, take it away.
All right, hi everybody. So page 44 of the packet has the nice colorful list of projects.
Mike,
This
is
is
it
a-
possible
Do you
for you
have
to
it?
put that up on the screen?
Yes, I can. So I can't see what the screen is. I have to look up here. There we go.
I have it twice.
So, the only a couple updates, and I'll highlight them. We're going to keep this chart going for the FY23 projects. I also heard from the general manager that he likes this because it's kind of an accountability measure to make sure that we stay on top of all the projects that got funded. These are the projects that were funded last November, so coming up on 7 or 8 months now that these have been in process. The first one that I wanted to highlight is the second one down, the new Council on Aging van was delivered April 26th. It was outfitted and the logo was stuck on it and it's now in service. So that one we will mark as completed. There were supply chain issues, but it's all set now. And Kerry also wanted to let us know, even though it wasn't an FY23 project, I believe it was an FY22 project for a generator at the senior center. It finally arrived and it's ready to go after having had a final test and it's now in service. So 2 wins over at the COA.
54 weeks from order to placement.
No updates on facilities. If you skip down to fire though, our interim fire chief, Jim Wright, gave updates on all 3 of those projects. So the public safety radio system upgrade, he writes that 99% he's sure that the new regional dispatch HREC will fund this project with a development grant. So more to come on that. The firefighter protective clothing, the firefighting boots have been received, the bunker gear is ordered. Anticipated delivery will not be until late this year, early next year. And then for the 2 fire ambulances, the 2 units have been ordered. We have been told that we should be able to expect the 2 units before the end of the year. Police have an update. The tasers have been put into rotation. Project complete. Public Works, did you have anything updates? I think we were all set.
Before you flip the page,
Yeah.
curious, your anticipated project completion, is that intended to be the original date or the currently anticipated? I'm just noticing you're saying ambulances by the end of the year, but you say complete in December of '26.
Ambulances, yeah, that was probably the original.
Okay.
Units have been ordered, totally sure. Yeah, I think 2026 was the original estimate for that. And so the anticipated start was November 2023. The anticipated completion date was 3 years later. I guess we ordered them in 2023 and it takes a few years for them to get outfitted and ordered and all that. I know there was a delay on supply for ambulances, but that we could probably move that up to later in maybe 2024 for the 2 units. I'll have to verify with the fire chief that.
I'm just wondering if it might be helpful to say the anticipated date, but have another column that says actual. or something to clarify, you know, what was
Delivery.
originally planned and what's the current plan.
Right, yeah, I think the anticipated start is that was the original plan, and then, we can work on that, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, like public safety parking lot, it says complete June, and this is construction in the summer, so that obviously doesn't make sense.
Okay, yeah, we can fix the chart to do that. I think that might have been the only updates for this go around. Oh, I can also mention that the design for Hawes Pool, that's something that I've been hands-on with. So we had a meeting earlier this morning with the pool committee, which had got together a few years ago and did a study between Hawes Pool and Father Max Pool. And because of that study, and we had a couple of, maybe a fiscal year ago, fall 2023, we had funded a design for Hawes Pool in the amount of $350,000. And we have a placeholder amount in FY24 that's a construction cost for that Hawes Pool for $4 million. That's just the placeholder number. That's just based on best guess estimates from a couple of years ago. What we have learned from this morning, and the pool committee has given a sense of the meeting agreement to, is that there's a revised pool site plan that is going to help conform to that $4 million placeholder by actually reducing a little bit of the pool depth from what was originally planned to be 9 feet to a maximum of 6 feet 6 inches, which is still completely within regulation, you know, for swimmers, and it's actually probably even safer to have it be a little bit less depth. And also has, I don't have the pictures as part of this meeting, but it's gonna have what they're calling a peninsula, which is basically a nice wide platform for people to be able to kind of sit and dangle their feet over into either side of the pool. Basically, it's a separator between the shallow and the deeper side. And the good news is that what our contractor is telling us is that if we do move forward with this site plan, that it'll help us get closer to that $4 million placeholder. Estimates are being generated as part of the design process, so they're not, I don't have final figures yet, but what we're understanding was that due to escalating costs and all the supply issues and all that things, is that if we had gone with the original site plan that the study committee had done a few years ago, it would be $6 million. So this version of it will help get us stay on track for $4 million.
Yeah, the designer did make some design changes, you know, because that's right, we did the walkthrough, he was estimating upwards of $6 million for that project. The new design does everything that Mike says, and also I think there's no need to relocate the splash park, stay where it is. So that's another expense that's saved. And the peninsula will divide the main pool from what will be the wading pool, so to speak, and that had been located elsewhere on the original design. So he will continue to work on the new design and update that estimate, and hopefully it'll be coming closer to the $4 million estimate. And I think, and then Jerry?
Does this mean that this pool wouldn't be able to, the kids wouldn't be able to have swim teams?
No, there's no change in the recreational use.
No change in the recreation, okay, so the kids will still be able to do that? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Jerry?
Basically, I'm answering Ann's question. The original design of the 49 pool was oversized. So now with the redesign, we're able to put that peninsula in, put the wading pool in, and still fall within the guidelines of hosting swim meets.
Oh, good.
Sarah?
Does it take into, I'm sure it does, but I know when we walked through, he talked about it being a zero entry pool. Is that something, does the peninsula
Yes.
allow for that, so that we
Think
don't
of-
have to have other, to make it accessible to everyone?
Yeah,
Not have any other, like they had
it
talked
still has
about?
the zero entry. Picture the pool
Yep,
with a walk-in entry, and that walk-in entry continues and then there's
Past
a
the
peninsula,
peninsula?
past the peninsula
Okay.
into the wading pool.
okay,
And
There's an
a
opening
peninsula
gap
there.
back.
okay,
There's
that's
a-
what I couldn't envision that, so that's,
Yeah.
there is a break in the peninsula to allow for entry in.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's all the updates I have, Mr. Chair.
Can we just go back and clarify? I didn't understand what was said about the ambulances. I thought you said that they were going to be received by the end of the year?
That's what I
Two
thought.
units have been ordered. We have been told that we should be able to expect the 2 units before the end of this year. I'm assuming he means fiscal, or sorry, end of calendar year, so December of 23. This is from the fire chief, so.
Really? So does that mean they're complete and ready to use by
No.
December, or does that mean the truck has arrived and then it has to be sent out for outfitting?
Because we were told like 2 years, right?
Right, that's probably the November 23 to December 26 timeline there. That's probably the 2-year timeline that you're saying with the ordering and all that. I can try to clarify, I'll try to text Jim and see if he can clarify that during this meeting, so just an update that he had submitted.
Or we could just make it a
Yeah.
follow-up item to verify for our next meeting. Or actually, why don't we do it this way, Mike? If you can verify that with the chief,
Yep.
submit it to me, and I'll make sure it gets out to the committee.
Okay.
Would that work for everybody?
Yeah.
Just an update? Okay. That we don't have to text him right now.
Sure.
Are there any other questions on the update? And so we schedule updates every
2 months.
2 months, so the next one would be 2 months from now. Okay, Sarah, yes.
Sorry.
It's all right.
Would, okay, I'm a little confused on my meetings, so I apologize. But I think we talked about, and I don't know if it exists, previous projects because of, actually, we talked about it at our last capital outlay committee meeting, was because there were a number of projects that were used to resolve fiscal year 23 issues that had either been canceled, postponed, or that we had discussed possibly getting an update at some point on previous year's projects and their status.
Mhm.
Is that something that's in the works, or what is the plan for that? Because I believe that was at our last meeting that was requested.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good question. I think we'll review the draft policy in a moment where there's language now to say that. I think what we have here will work for those kinds of cancellations on the deck now, but I think you also are talking about prior year projects.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, going forward, it won't be a problem because we have this, but I think it would be nice to look back at what's,
Right, what projects are still
It hasn't
open?
been
yeah, what
It's
projects
probably-
are still open.
I mean, just generically speaking, we did what we did to make the budget work this year. We uncovered every rock, so I think those are the projects. I can't say for 100% certainty that there's anything else that's out there waiting to either happen or be canceled, but we really did what we could to try to not have to go back to the taxpayers to this past.
I
and so I don't
understand
think
that, but
there's a lot
I
of
think we
other.
should know if there are other ones
There's not a
out
lot of
there.
other windfalls out there, though. I don't.
No, we're not looking for money. What we want to know is which projects are still in progress. There are other projects. I understand that maybe there are
Yeah.
not other projects where we can reclaim funds,
Mhm.
but I do believe that there are other projects that were voted in FY '22 and probably FY '21 that are not yet complete, that are still underway.
Yeah, things like the ambulances take several years.
Right. That's what we're asking for, and that's what we requested last month.
Is that part of the policy to look back to?
Well, policy is just going to say that any projects that are canceled shall be reported to the outlay.
Honestly,
I think in terms of an update,
But you-
complete picture means
Mhm.
all projects, not just one thing.
I'll have to check with the manager about that. I don't have an answer for that.
Okay.
like, can- that's why he took out the cameos that we want.
Perhaps they should get all open projects.
Right.
Yes,
Right.
there's a good way of
27
saying it.
is
Right.
done, 17 is done.
Right.
I'd like to see that, but it's.
I did all my bills.
Because that would be helpful with planning as we go into the next year. If there's ones that we know aren't going to occur, that would be helpful as we go forward, thinking about what we're approving moving forward. Because rather than using it for operational expenditures, we could use it for capital expenditures. Perhaps.
Well, if they've been appropriated for capital,
We used them for operating expenses already at town meeting.
With the town meeting vote, right?
the town meeting vote.
But that's a project that's closed with extra money, right?
Right.
So we're-
But only ones funded through free cash.
True.
But if we
If
know-
bonded, that's different, obviously.
Right.
But it's good to have a complete picture. I think to make a decision, you need to know the whole context that you're making a decision in.
And also to have a better sense of what our town departments are currently managing,
Yes.
right? Like, how many major projects I mean, I know DPW has the big water tank project coming, now we're talking about this giant wastewater thing coming. I think there are some other projects in there, and so at some point, we might have a conversation about, is this adequate, if we're going to add extra work, is there adequate staffing to manage that?
I made a note of that, I'll talk to Tony about it.
We're gonna go like this.
Are there any other questions on the agenda item for updates? All right. The next item is Public Works look ahead at future projects. So Mark, you're on, Mark.
Yeah, thank you.
Need some help? I'll go on the other side.
Thank you.
Yeah. Get your kicks on Route 66. See if I remember.
All right, so you all had in your packets some of the DPW projects here that's on the fiscal '24, and just trying to get an update to you for all of them, so I put them in order as best I can for that packet I gave out to you. So the first up is the cemetery mower. Each year we try to update the mowers at the cemetery. Last year we received approval, thank you, for a new mower, and that has been received, and we were asking again in fiscal '24 for a new rider mower. Initially it was for $10,000 with increases. You'll see it's going to be gone up to $12,000. The next two on the projects that were in your packet replace the backhoe and truck 25. And each year, this is our vision to, this is the vehicles we're going to replace next year, but what happens, vehicles age quicker, they just work more, and some have to rise to the top and replace these ones that we projected might need to be replaced, and the mechanics have said that the backhoe we can keep going for another year, maybe two, and same with truck 25. But in their place, there are two vehicles that are really necessary. One is truck 10, that's the water department utility truck. I mean, that's used every day. It's you can see the particulars on it. It's a very important piece of equipment. It's the water department uses day and night all year long. Has a lot of hours on it, and it's just a lot of wear and tear on it. So we're looking to put that in fiscal '24 budget in lieu of the backhoe. And you see the estimated replacement cost of $174,000. That number will be updated, but that's a recent number that we received from them. But like in the past, we'll get a firmer number as we get closer to the summer, and something we can lock into. The same with truck 39. It's a 1-ton dump truck. It's really not very useful other than maybe drive to go to a cup of coffee and come back. That's about it. It can't plow, it really can't do much of anything. And it's
You still
replacement.
carry coffee though.
It can carry power. Replacement cost is $96,000, and it's, and that would be in lieu of the truck 25. And it's really crazy, the vehicle cost now. I mean, he's probably a 40% increase of what we were experiencing 2, 3, 4 years ago. It's really disheartening, but that's where we're at now.
Mark, can I just ask you something on that?
Yeah.
On the replacement for 39? You said that, you know, this one can't plow or anything. Would the new one you anticipate be a plow truck as well, or just?
Absolutely.
Oh, it would be?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep, and that cost reflects that, includes the plow and the attachment.
I noticed, and I know from experience that a lot of these trucks get rusty, you know, they're old, they get rusty, that sort of thing. But now that, do we keep them inside now?
Yes.
Okay, so that part of the equation should start slowing down a little? Hopefully?
We think so. I mean, this is a 2007 vehicle.
Yeah.
In 2015 was when we did the Public Works
Right.
garage,
Yeah,
which included the garage, so you can put these undercover,
yeah,
and also the wash bay, the vehicle wash bay, which we never had, so we should see, payback for that type of work, and vehicles lasting longer and performing
right.
to their
Okay.
best ability for a longer period of time.
Is most of the fleet indoors now?
It's all indoors.
All of it? Okay, okay.
The street sweeper, that's the biggest item. It was on the capital outlay for fiscal '23 up to the 11th hour when the sewer vac truck really started causing some issues. So the mechanics were able to put the street sweeper in operation this year. They've been doing a lot of Band-Aid work to it. So this is a vehicle that you see a quote attached to it. And this was a quote from last year for $305,000. So we'll be getting a new quote, and I'm guessing that's gonna go up a little bit more as well.
These get put up to date, right?
Well, there are state contracts where that we get these vehicles off of, and they're a lot better prices than if you went out probably for a bid, because these vendors are selling volume. So
Okay, so the quotes you're getting are consistent with the state contract?
correct, yep,
Okay.
yep.
One thing about that sweeper, Mark, that might be of interest going forward, that relates to stormwater. If at the end of the day we have a utility or an enterprise fund just for stormwater, street sweeper seems to be an operation that's related to stormwater management. And there's maybe
Definitely,
a possibility that kind of capital could be funded from an enterprise fund.
absolutely could, yes. So next on the sheet is Ayers Pond Dam improvements. It's under Public Works. It's being handled more by the Conservation Commission, Holly Jones, because that's a Conservation Commission property, but design funds were appropriated last year. They're pretty much 100% on the design for the improved. It's not improvements, but repairs. Every year we have to do a dam inspection, and some things came up. Not too severe, but enough to warrant investing approximately $165,000 to repairing some of the gates and some of the low flow valves that are there. So Holly Jones let me know that that's in front of dam safety right now for their approval for the proposed work, and they hope to be going out to bid this year. So this is something that's moving forward very well. Bridge rehabilitation at Hawes on Washington Street at Hawes. You have the TEC report here. We did give it at the site walk back a month or so ago. Right now they're looking at approximately $712,000, but this is very preliminary. They're working at it. We should have an updated figure come this this summer, but, I mean, this number does have a contingency in there, so hopefully it's not gonna go up too much there. The next one's water main cleaning and lining. This is the MWRA grant loan that we get each year. It's really, it's a loan, it's a zero interest loan for cleaning and lining work that we've been doing for many years and accelerated the past couple of years. Right now, we're in year 3 of the program, cleaning and lining water mains. It's been, making great progress, about 22,000 feet a year of water main being cleaned and lined, which is great. In the past, we were doing 3,000, maybe 5,000 tops, so this MWRA is an annual thing provided by the MWRA. The MWRA meter connection chamber construction, so since 2004, we've been advocating for the improvements of Route 1 University Ave with the state, and we're on the funding cycle. It's a $25 million project to upgrade that intersection. Right now, well, until a couple months ago, it was scheduled for fiscal 25 and 26, but based on the design not proceeding as quickly as we hope, it's going to be fiscal 26 and 27. So part of that construction is widening Route 1, bless you, in University Ave, which requires the relocation of these meter pits that are in the ground. These are huge chambers that control the flow of water into Norwood. We now have 2 sources of water. One's coming down Route 1 from Westwood, part of the MWRA system, into Norwood. And this meter pit is in front of McDonald's. If you can picture that, at Route 1 in Everett Street, and that would now be in a travel lane. We got to get it off the travel lane. So that's quite a bit of work that will be involved there to do that. That's the responsibility of the utility company, and that would be us. And there's also a connection on University Ave. That was a redundant main that was brought in years ago to provide Norwood as a second connection in case one went down, which was a great asset. That chamber also needs to be relocated. So we got design funds last year. We're trying to work things out with MWRA and Mass DOT on this whole thing. So we haven't started design, but we're talking to them. But I will say the construction funds here will not be needed for fiscal 24. It's going to be 25 at the earliest, maybe pushed out to 26. So those funds there, I think we have $750,000. It's going to be taken off for the fiscal 24 capital outlay plan.
And just to clarify, Bill, you do the 2 meter pits separately, not at the same time. You want
Correct.
to do the other one, and the idea would be to get the work done before they start the widening project, right? Or would you do it in conjunction with the widening project?
We initially thought doing it prior, but talking to the state, they're kind of encouraging us, we'll add it to the project. So their project will
So
include.
town funded, but MassDOT
Yep,
constructed,
Yep.
okay?
yep. We just provide the funds for the work.
Yeah, presumably a little bit of oversight to make sure you're doing.
Yeah, so we would design it
Yeah,
with our consultant, and our consultant would oversee it. to make sure-
stick in their plan set and have their contracts.
Exactly. Yep. Annual pavement management program. This is the paving of the roads. Once again, we used to do, a couple miles of streets. This year we're doing 10 miles of streets, 3rd year of a 5-year plan. So that's going well. It's worked out very, very well as far as being able to manage it engineering wise. Maybe not very happy for people, commuters and stuff, but that's,
Streets look good after.
but after it, they look great. They look great. So that's going well. And that's those are the two in a row there, the road repair programs. So repair, paint, replace the water tank. So we have 2 water tanks. The bigger one was built in 1958. That holds 4 million gallons. The one on legs was built 1939. It's a 500,000 gallon. We like to paint them, clean them up and fix them up every 20 years. So we're at that point now. Based on our consultant's review and inspection by water tank inspection company, if we were to repair it and paint it, it would cost a certain amount of money that is pretty high now, because there's a lot of safety precautions that have to be built into it. So what I provided for you is we have a report that the manager's office has. We've got to start talking about this earnestly as in this executive summary on page 3. There are 3 options. One is to rehab both tanks, which has been the conventional way, and that's $4.6 million. But we need to start talking about replacing these tanks. And we've got one option where we keep one tank, that's the bigger one that was built in 1958, and replace the taller one that was built in 39, or do we replace both of them? And you can see the numbers there. 4.6 to rehab both, replace one, rehab one is $9 million, and to replace both is $12 million. So that's a discussion that we're really going to have to sit down and decide what's the best way to go on this.
Replacement is replacing the 2 tanks for 2 new tanks.
2 new tanks.
Correct. No matter what you do, there's 2 tanks.
Mhm. Yeah.
And you do need, if you're replacing 2 tanks are necessary for distribution of water?
Right, and what you'll see in the presentation when we do that is, it's based on fire flows and annual daily consumption, what you want for a safe yield. So you really couldn't get away with 1 tank.
Mark?
Mhm.
Sorry, what's the typical lifespan of a water tank like that? What are other communities doing?
So the one that was built in 1939 is about, I forget, it's about 7 years away from, that's it, you're done. All right.
And I would
Typical.
imagine replacing it isn't gonna get any cheaper
It will not.
then. Right.
7 years to 2 late.
I know.
Got a dumb question, Mark. Got a dumb question on the water tanks.
Mhm.
With the now that we've been on MWRA water and all that, dumb question. What is the water in those, the purpose of those water tanks? Is it emergency water? Is it, I mean, we turn our faucet on, that water's coming right out of the MWRA, right, system?
Mhm.
Are those tanks just emergency water, or actually is that water being circulated, emptied? Is that the water that goes to the hydrants? So just real quick, what's the purpose of those
Yeah,
tanks?
so you'll see water tanks, they're always elevated or in the highest part of town, which
Yeah.
they are now.
For gravity.
And gravity
Yeah.
is your water pressure that's coming from those tanks being up so high. They're providing the proper water pressure throughout the town for domestic use, for business use, and for fire flows.
So that water gets circulated.
Well, there lies another problem, is that big 4 million gallon tank doesn't change over as much, and you start getting issues. Now you're talking water quality. All right, we've come so far with the requirements from DEP and EPA and water quality that tank isn't changing the water over enough. So we're always testing the water. We're always doing fine, but we're getting close to chlorine levels, basically, of getting kind of below what we really want out there. So that's another benefit of getting rid of that big tank and having 2 normal-sized tanks where the water would change very frequently, and you wouldn't have that stagnation of that water. So.
Well, the tank kind of functions as an equalizer, right? You get a constant flow of water in from the river.
Correct.
The demand for that water goes up and down during the day, particularly it
Yes.
goes down at night, up during the middle of the day.
Exactly.
And so the water level in the tank goes up and down to compensate, to provide equalization, so you're always getting the same pressure.
That's right. I mean, if you have a system, the pressure stays the same. You're not getting these variations of pressure. That's the benefit of
And if the peak use, you still got water in the system,
Mhm.
and then it can fill back up again at night, things like that.
So that's a discussion we're gonna really have to have. And the last here that I had on that chart is the upgrade of traffic signals for Manhattan, Washington Street to the center from, actually Walpole Street signal at Winter, and then down to Giles Square, right to Railroad Ave, and then down Manhattan Street past the police and fire stations to upgrade the system. It's been in since 1984. The system is going to be upgraded. We're in design right now. We anticipate by November we will be out to bid. Right now it's a placeholder of 4.5 million. Talking to the consultant recently, that number's probably going up because steel is out of control. You're going to have all new mast arms and signal heads out there. You're going to have issues with costs and timing of delivery. We're not going to get this all at once. This is going to probably take a year from starting to put the mast arms in and head heads and everything, and then when we finish, just because there's a lot of them involved. Supply just isn't there to just get it all at once in. So that number will be going up, but we anticipate come November we'll be ready to be going out to bid.
And you want to use arms, not span wires. You want to use the arms rather than span wires.
No span lines.
No span
Yeah,
wires, okay.
yeah, mast arms. Yep. And then finally in the packet, while it's not on the list in your packet that you were given prior to the meeting, the Hennessy Field Basin that we talked about today, we anticipate those funds to be through ARPA, which we have presently now. This is an updated design. We initially were thinking around $400,000 for that. We're now at $855,000. That 400 really was a placeholder, but that's where we're at for that design there.
And we still have remaining ARPA money that we could use towards that project.
Correct.
We have 2.3 million still.
Yes.
It's the out years for this whole project where it becomes the larger issue.
And that's all I had. If there's any other
Any questions for Mark?
I got one, I know you talked about the Route 1 Everett Street. The Prospect Street project, Mark, is that gonna happen before or after Everett Street?
before, that's gonna be bid this summer. So we're gonna be in construction. I don't know if they're gonna start construction this year, probably first thing in the spring. Because summer will go out to bid, and they'll have to do all the paperwork and submittals. And by the time you get it, it'll be winter, and they'll just wait.
You've seen the design of it then, right, and all that?
Mhm.
Are they getting rid of the rotary, or how are they gonna
Yes,
just?
that's gone. It's gonna be a conventional intersection, T intersection, with traffic signals, pedestrian controls to get across. It's almost a $9 million project.
Thank you.
State funded.
Any other questions for Mark on Public Works, water, et cetera? All right. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. We enjoy it. All right, moving on to the agenda, we have capital improvement policy draft for review. A new draft. And I should just let you know that we as a capital outlay committee have been looking at the improvement policy for some time, kind of initially building on some of the work you and I have done.
I actually saw the meeting
Okay.
where you did that.
All right.
Yeah.
And the intent is that if the outlay can make a recommendation that we're comfortable with, we would have our members from Finance Commission present that draft to the FinCom. I would do the same for the Board of Selectmen, and Marie would do the same for the school committee, to seek their review and hopefully approval of revisions to the financial policy for capital improvement.
How many years is it now?
Yeah. So the only changes are the highlights. Okay. So, yes, I did add just above, I
Was he
think,
with us?
where did I put the additional information regarding,
It's gonna work.
on the criteria? I'm sorry, can I take a look at it?
Oh, sure, so
Yeah, I don't-
that's the first page,
You want-
and then there's this
Oh, that's, okay, so this one first. So we talked about last meeting, getting updates for projects that have been canceled. This was an outgrowth from our special town meeting report where a variety of projects were reported as closed, some of which actually had been canceled. And there was an interest by the Outlay to have a process or a way to work with management on getting updates on those projects that have been canceled, basically coming off the capital outlay plan. So I added this language to the policy just to, cover that instance or that procedure, if you will. Projects that have been canceled shall be reported to the capital outlay committee during the course of its scheduled meetings. What I meant by that was if there's a way that this phrase could be connected to the updates that Mike has been taking us through periodically during the capital outlay year. So that's the intent. And any feedback on that?
A
Yes,
couple
Maya.
of things. One, I like this, but I wonder if we could say projects that have been canceled or substantially altered,
Yes.
substantially changed maybe, shall be reported to the capital outlay committee. And the same language you already have for the rest of it. And then the other thing is that I think that was one thing that the capital outlay committee was requesting, but another thing, I think one of the things that we were discussing was when the civic project was going back to town meeting for new approval with a higher level of funding, there was a question of should that come back to capital outlay before it goes to town meeting. And I think the committee's consensus was that yes, it should. And I think that maybe somewhere in here there should be a statement that because assessment of value is part of the role of the capital outlay committee, if the estimated cost of a project has substantially changed, that project should come back before the capital outlay committee.
And I think that is the direction I think you as Finance Commission had asked at your meeting. That's why it did come back. So I think your suggestion would be that we come up with language that would codify that, so to speak, in the policy.
Right.
As a normal course.
Right, I mean, there was some kind of statement that, well, this project has already been approved, but certainly when we make approvals of projects, it's like, well, yes, we think that would be a good idea to do, but then there's a secondary question of, is it a good idea to spend that much money on it? And if we said, we want to spend, $100 million on the Hawes pool, I think people might say, maybe we shouldn't do that, right? But if we can do it for $4 million, then maybe you're going to get more support. And so I do think that changing the cost, and I understand that most things are not going to change that drastically, I'm just, for argument's sake, but I think we were looking at nearly a 50% increase in cost of something, and I think everybody agreed that that should be worth discussion again.
Okay.
Would it be simpler, or maybe to say that any time capital outlay goes to town meeting, it needs to be approved by the capital outlay committee?
Yes, I
That-
agree with that too, right, before a town meeting vote.
Yeah, no, just anything. It doesn't,
Right.
new, altered, combined, separated, whatever. If there's gonna be a town meeting article, it should be a capital outlay recommendation to go along with it.
I would support that.
Well, any town meeting vote needed on a capital project would need to be based on a recommendation from the capital outlay committee or something along that lines.
Maybe that's our function, is to advise the town meeting.
Right.
Recommendation, so therefore.
Right, right.
Well, if it's going back to town meeting for a new vote because we need more money.
Okay. Well, we can try to work out some language. Anything else on this particular topic? I think the next edit is, I think I've captured this. I think it was just an addition of adding maximization of grant opportunities to the
Yeah.
list in one of the criteria. We're cool with that? All right. All right, we'll take one more shot at the policy and bring it back to the next meeting. How's that?
You really
Never
like
say
saying
never.
that, don't you?
Yes. The policy draft that never ends.
This makes him very happy to work on. He knows that they will never end.
All right. Before we adjourn, no, we have the approval of minutes, I'm sorry, and then we can have a discussion about next meeting. So on to the final agenda item of approval of the April 27th, 2023 meeting minutes. Can I have a, what's the will of the committee here on the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Bernie,
Second.
seconded by Eric. All in favor of the approval of the minutes, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It carries unanimously. Shall we have just, before we adjourn, shall we have a brief discussion about what we have work ahead of us? I think one of the things that we're entering into now that town meeting is done is that maybe you and I can talk about the process for developing the projects for the FY24 list for review. Do you want to give us an overview of how that's going to work? And I don't know if there's a specific timeline you have in mind, but
Yeah, well, so I guess the first thing would be, when a town meeting date is set, we have to kind of work backwards from that. So generally, the fall has been the capital town meeting, but it's alternated between October and November. So probably might be a good idea to, next time you see Tony, you see what, between him and the clerk, what they're starting to think about for it, whether it's gonna be October or November timeframe. Last year was November, 2 years ago was October. A month backwards from that, figure that's when the warrant needs to get out and get into people's mailboxes and all that. So really, this time of year, now that May town meeting's over and we're getting into June, this is kind of, as I had explained a few meetings ago, June and July are really the months where the staff gets together on a weekly basis and develops the FY24 plan, and also looking at the next 4 out years as well, the best guess of what the next 4 years will look like, and try to smooth it out as much as possible so there aren't a lot of peaks and valleys in the overall dollar amounts over time. We haven't done that yet, and obviously Mark was here tonight and gave you the FY24 plan as was projected at the end of FY23 for year 2 of the 5-year plan. So we just moved that up 1 year and said, here's what we expect to be FY24's public works plan. But we put that up with the staff, and then facilities might say, gee, we have a particularly heavy year right now, or police or fire, whatever it might be. And we say, sorry, Mark, we can't afford all these in FY24, we'll have to push one out, or facilities has to push out, or it's kind of like horse trading. We figure out how to make it all work. So we kind of need 2 months to do that with people's vacation schedules and summer and all that. So really the next time that we usually come forward with a pretty well-built plan will be end of July, early August. So not to say we can't meet June, July, but I really won't be able to give you an FY24 plan until
I think what we could probably do initially for a June meeting is, I would think by sometime in June, management would have a pretty good outline of what are the timelines now. I mean, we can talk to Tony about that in terms of what is the outline of the plan to your point, for working back from the fall town meeting. What are the timelines that necessitate going forward? I think one thing that I think the committee, correct me if I'm wrong, committee members, is that we'd like to get as much information earlier than last year's plan.
You'd be approving in the afternoon before it goes to the board of
Yeah, I
selectmen.
mean, I think what happens is that if it's June and July, and then we're now having our meetings in August,
Yep.
and, just looking at that timeline, I don't think we want to be in a situation where the committee feels like it's being rush to approve something because we have to hit the warrant at a specific date for the fall meeting, so.
Right. Well, just to also further clarify, what we do between June and July is get better quotes, we have to reach out to vendors, like, there is work that goes on behind the scenes, so that, you know, all the quotes need to be updated for FY '24. That way we give you the best possible plan, it's not just placeholders any longer. Jerry has a question.
Yes, Jerry?
When is the warrant closed?
Usually about a month before town meeting date, so something like that.
So, I don't know, when did we meet? We met after Veterans Day last year, so let's say we have a special town meeting usually in the middle of November, the warrant will close in October.
Okay.
And that's
About
where
5
it was.
weeks, yeah. 5
Yeah,
weeks.
5 weeks, so early October. But,
November
Yes,
is better for the, to have the special meeting because of the money part of it.
right,
We have to
free
get
cash certification.
free cash certification,
Right.
yeah.
Yes, Sarah?
I'm just trying to remember back to last year, because when we were voting and we had that meeting, it was before the Board of Selectmen meeting, was that the night the warrant was closing that we voted? Like, do all the numbers have to be ready for the closing of the warrant meeting, because?
Not really, because the warrant closes with pretty generic language.
Yeah.
And the
Okay.
motions themselves are the important, that's the most important thing. When do we have enough time to put the motions forward before town meeting?
That and the yellow sheets that go
Yeah,
on.
last
The
year,
yellow
we
sheets
voted
have
the night
details.
before the Board of Selectmen's
No, we
meeting.
voted like an hour before the
Yeah.
Board of
Yeah,
that's
Selectmen's
right.
meeting.
They had to
That's
run
what-
upstairs.
We didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
Right.
We couldn't argue anything.
Yes, Jerry?
I think that if we give the different department heads and management the time to filter everything out, so they have an accurate report they can give us versus us meeting midstream, I would prefer to just wait till they're done. If that happens to be, late July, early August, that's fine. At least they've done their due diligence, and we'll have the ability to look at everything.
I was thinking, yes, I'm sorry, Mike, go ahead.
So I do see the wisdom in what Jerry's suggesting, but I also think that part of the role of this committee can be in setting some priorities and providing feedback into the administration to say what the committee feels that should be the priorities. And so if we wait until the plan's already done, then we've lost the opportunity to really participate in that discussion.
Well, that wasn't what I was looking to do. I'm trying to remember when I was sitting on the other side, when we had to put everything together, and it was, adjusted, approved, and whatever had to be done. And then they went to the capital outlay. So I wasn't trying to take the authority or the ability to look at everything. I'm just trying to say, give them the opportunity to get all their ducks in a row, so to speak.
Right, but Mike was explaining that part of getting their ducks in a row is looking at, well, we have these things we'd like to do over 5 years. Let's try and spread it out, even it out. Well, maybe this committee might have different thoughts on which things should be moved earlier and which things should be pushed later. And I think if we met with the administration during a time that they had some information but it wasn't finalized, then there could be some discussion about like, well, no, the committee really thinks that one has to be earlier, or, whatever it is, I don't know. But I just think when we wait till the plan is done, it's hard to then make adjustments.
I agree with that. Just know that sometimes we didn't get numbers in time.
Right, no, I
And
do
we're sitting
understand
here,
that,
so we're
yeah.
giving you a half
Right,
plan saying, we think it might be this, but we're not sure yet. So.
right.
We might want to consider, for our June meeting, just having that as a specific agenda item, kind of like just an agenda item, planning for FY24 plan. That way, we all can be the committee can be in the room, maybe we can have Tony here. Molly's here tonight, but Molly and Meg can represent finance, and maybe we can, together, kind of just look at what the work to be done in front of us is at that time. It's still June, still lots of time between then and the fall meeting, but could serve as a way of getting us all on the same page. And is there any other, so we'll do that, we'll add that, but before we talk about any other agenda items, is there anything else for a June meeting we would want to look at, or we just want to use June
We're
to
gonna finalize
focus
the
on?
policy, or the
Policy,
bylaw?
yes.
Oh, whatever.
Don't say finalize, we don't,
No,
we don't know that.
Review it yet again.
Review yet again, and hopefully,
Well, then it has to go to a couple other committees to.
no, but for us, to
we don't worry about that.
move
We
it
just
on
need
to the
Yeah,
next
yeah.
committee.
Move the
Okay,
question.
so we'll have,
Another 2 years.
okay, so we'll have 2 agenda items, actually 3. We'll hopefully have the minutes to approve, we'll have the policy to review, and we'll have an agenda item for FY '24 planning, capital outlay planning. Does that work for everyone? So we should look at dates? This is the fun part. Dates, all right. So, we are now on the 24th.
And budgets, capital would be, again, next spring, again, right? We won't really be bringing, unless there's an emergency, we won't be bringing anything forward in the fall.
The fall would be the time that we approve FY '24 plans.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
But it will be voted on in the spring.
No, we voted, no, we split it. So
Oh, we
now
split it.
do all, no, we now do all capital. So this, the plan we're voting on will be FY '24. We've moved it from the annual meeting to the fall meeting,
With the exception of the school,
with the exception of the school
the
stuff.
school IT. yeah.
So we're doing capital twice. Well, we're doing the early things that need to be looked at
Well, we just,
at
yeah,
town meeting.
right, we do those, and
And
we
then
do,
you do
we
it
do,
again in the fall.
yeah, that's right, we did the only thing we did in the, is the schools, the
Right,
tech,
that's
yeah,
right.
that's right, okay.
That's sort of the exception to the rule, with good reason.
We shouldn't go on
Um,
vacation.
Hmm?
We shouldn't go on vacation. We should be.
So, consideration for perhaps the week of June 8th or 15th, just people check their calendars to see if,
I
You
don't
wanna
see
do that
any,
soon?
I don't see any town meetings.
it is
these
kind of
days, but-
soon, but,
I can't do the week of the 12th.
That's 3 weeks away.
I'm sorry, I looked at the wrong month, the week of the 5th or the 12th I was referencing. The 12th is not good for Eric,
Yeah, well, if you want to go a month, wouldn't you want to do like the week of the 19th?
the 19th?
Yeah.
That would be better for
We
me.
don't have a board meeting that sounds good.
All right. And
Be like the
have we
21st.
been meeting on a
Yeah,
specific
take a
day of the
break.
week
Yeah,
lately?
I
We've
think.
been all over the
You
place.
think you have the tickets?
Well, the 19th is a holiday.
Kathy has one on her phone.
So maybe the
Bring
20th
the
is
handicap
Tuesday. If you don't have a board meeting that night.
The
so
board meetings would be.
Second and fourth.
Right.
So you would be on the 13th and the 27th. So 20th would be safe.
20th. June the 20th,
Okay for everybody?
6:30. Okay?
What night of the week is that?
It is Tuesday?
Tuesday.
Yeah.
June
Are you sure that's right in June for the board of?
Yep, I got the calendar open.
Okay,
They're
all
meeting the
right.
13th and the 27th.
Okay.
June 20th.
Yeah, that's right, because we, wait a minute, so we met on the 23rd.
Yep. It's,
Okay, yeah, all right, right, he's right, okay. Okay,
What day are we meeting?
Tuesday the 20th,
Tuesday the-
6:30, hopefully at town hall.
yeah, we'll make sure that the
Please.
room's available. I just have to make sure it's available.
actually, we'll make it Sunday afternoon on graduation day. We'll
There
be
you go.
here. Okay, with that, so that will be the two agenda, the agenda
It's like
items.
the
We
hammer
have
up with
a
the foot
time and a
cameras
date, and now we'll proceed. We didn't get approval of minutes, did we?
Yes.
approve of minutes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, then we're all set. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mayev. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous? Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.